you ever felt your consciousness expanding beyond the limits of your physical body? Jacob Grinberg dedicated his life to exploring the mysteries of the mind and perception. His research offers a fascinating perspective on the journey of personal transformation. When we align ourselves with the frequencies of abundance and possibility, we attract experiences that reflect that internal vibration. On the other hand, when we focus on scarcity and limitation, we create a reality that reinforces those beliefs. Life is full of ups and downs, moments of joy and pain. We have all faced losses that have shaken us to the core, leaving us with an apparent inner emptiness. But what if I told you that these moments of crisis are actually opportunities in disguise, that the greatest losses can be the catalyst for the deepest transformations? Imagine that you are walking down a narrow path. You have walked this path 1,000 times. You know every curve and every stone. Suddenly the ground crumbles beneath your feet. You find yourself in free fall. Your heart is in your throat, not knowing where it will land. This moment of loss, of complete disorientation, is terrifying, but it is also a portal to something new. Do not be afraid, because it will not touch you. Background losses have a way of shaking us out of our comfort zone. They force us to face the impermanence of life, to let go of our illusory control before everything we took for granted fades away, leaving us naked and exposed. But it is precisely in this vulnerability where the seed of our transformation lies. Think of the caterpillar that locks itself in its cocoon for it. This confinement may seem like a prison, a punishment, but in reality, it is a necessary process for its metamorphosis. Inside that dark cocoon, the caterpillar completely dissolves. Its tissues decompose to make way for something completely new, and when it emerges, it is no longer a crawling creature, but a majestic butterfly ready to soar through the skies. Literally, the caterpillar goes from crawling to flying, that powerful. It can be a change in your life. In the same way, our losses are cocoons. They immerse us in darkness. They force us to face parts of ourselves that perhaps we preferred to ignore. But if we allow ourselves to fall apart, if we embrace the process of transformation, we will emerge renewed with a fresh perspective and a strength that we knew we had it. Now, transforming the pain of loss into growth is not an easy or linear process. It requires that we allow ourselves to fully feel and process our emotions, as uncomfortable as they may be. Too often we try to jump straight to the lesson without honoring the depth of our grief. But grief is not something we just get over. It is something we learn to carry with us until it is overcome. Imagine you are holding a cup of tea. If it is already full to the brim, there is no room to add anything new. Similarly, if we hold on tightly to our grief, to our old identities and patterns, we leave no room for new experiences, and learning to come in, letting go, does not mean denying or forgetting it. It means creating space, a powerful technique to practice this. Detachment is meditation. When we sit quietly and observe our thoughts and emotions without judging them, we begin to see them as temporary visitors rather than permanent truths. We can acknowledge a painful thought, feel it fully, and then gently let it go. Another tool is conscious breathing. When we are overwhelmed by emotion, our breathing becomes shallow, and between eta, by bringing our attention to our breath, by observing the air entering and leaving our lungs, we anchor our awareness in the present. This practice can help us find moments of calm, even in the midst of the storm. As we learn to let go, we create space for new blessings. This doesn't mean life will become perfect overnight, but it does mean we will be more open to recognizing and receiving the gifts life has to offer, even if they come packaged in ways we didn't expect. Like the phoenix rising from its ashes, we have the ability to transform our losses into new beginnings by honoring our grief, by practicing detachment, and by making space for the new. We plant the seeds of our own resurrection. Let's remember, life never takes anything away from us without the promise of something greater on the horizon. in the process of transforming our losses into opportunities for growth. It's essential to shift our perspective from scarcity to abundance. Too often we focus on what we lack in relationships, the opportunities or resources we desire, but that seem out of reach. This scarcity mindset keeps us trapped in a cycle of lack, always longing for what we don't have, instead of appreciating the richness that already surrounds us. Consider for a moment the difference between a glass half empty and a glass half full. Both perspectives are true, but each has a profoundly different impact on our experience. When we focus on the empty half, we feel deprived, dissatisfied. But when we turn our attention to the full half, we open to a sense of sufficiency and even gratitude. Cultivating an abundance mindset doesn't mean denying our desires or pretending we don't face challenges. Rather, it's about reorienting our energy towards what we already have. Recognizing the blessings we may have taken for granted. It could be something as simple as the gift of a new dawn, the warmth of a cup of coffee in our hands, or the spontaneous laughter of a loved one. A good practice to foster this perspective is to keep a gratitude journal each day. Take a few minutes to write down 3 things you are grateful for. Just 3. They can be major accomplishments or small moments of joy. By consciously directing your attention to the positive, you train your brain to look for abundance rather than scarcity. Another key to unlocking abundance is to view life as a dynamic flow of giving and receiving. We often hold on so tightly to what we have for fear of losing it that we clog the natural circulation of energy. But when we give freely of our time, our resources, or our talents, we send a powerful message to the universe that we trust in its provision. This does not mean that we should give with the expectation of receiving something in return. Rather, it is about aligning ourselves with the generous spirit of life itself. Think of a river that flows continuously, enriching everything it touches. When we adopt this mentality of generosity, we become magnets for blessings. We can also use the power of language and ritual to cultivate abundance affirmations. For example, are a powerful tool to reprogram our subconscious beliefs as long as we accompany them with the corresponding emotion by repeating phrases such as, "I am a magnet for prosperity." While we feel truly prosperous, we begin to interrupt thought patterns of scarcity. In a similar way, rituals can help us anchor a feeling of abundance. This could be as simple as lighting a candle while setting an intention, or writing down your dreams and desires and planting them in the earth as symbolic seeds. By performing these acts with presence, and we align ourselves with the creative energy of the universe, not because the ritual has any power, but because it activates the power that we have. It is a kind of placebo spiritual. The most important thing is to understand that abundance is not just about material wealth. It's about living from a place of sufficiency, trusting that we will always have what we need when we need it. By shifting our focus from lack to fullness, we open the door to unlimited possibilities. In the wise words of Rumi, when you start walking down the path appears in the process of transforming our losses into stepping stones for growth. It is essential to cultivate a deep faith in the journey of life. This faith is not necessarily about religious beliefs, but a fundamental trust in the wisdom of our path. Even when we can't see the bigger picture, think about the last time you traveled to a new destination. Maybe you consulted a map or entered the address into your GPS, but ultimately you had to trust that each turn would bring you closer to where you needed to be. You couldn't see the entire path beforehand, but you kept going anyway, trusting that you would get there. Similarly, the journey of life is rarely a straight line. It's full of unexpected turns, detours, and apparent dead ends. Sometimes these detours can feel like mistakes, especially when they lead us through challenging terrain. But over time, we often find that these mistakes were actually necessary detours that led us exactly where we needed to be. Take the example of Steve Jobs. He was unceremoniously fired from the company he helped create. At the time, this event probably felt like a catastrophic failure, but Jobs would later call his firing the best thing that could have ever happened to me. It freed him to enter one of the most creative periods of his life, eventually leading him to return to Apple with a renewed, or consider the story of poet and activist Maya Angelou. As a child, she was rendered mute after suffering trauma, but it was during those years of silence that she discovered the power of the written word. She would later say, "I wrote to maintain my sanity, to rid myself of pain. I wrote to lift myself up, to help lift myself up from the pit of hopelessness." Her weakness became her greatest strength. Every challenge in our path is actually an opportunity in disguise to expand our consciousness. The tests we face are not arbitrary punishments, but personalized tests designed to bring out our wisdom, compassion, and resilience like coal that transforms into diamond under immense pressure. We too have the potential to shine brighter in adversity. Of course, trusting this process is not always easy. Especially when we are in the midst of darkness, this is where faith becomes an anchor, helping us maintain a higher vision, even when circumstances seem bleak. This faith does not deny the reality of pain, but allows us to see beyond. One way to cultivate this faith is through narrative. The stories we tell ourselves shape our experience of reality. When we find ourselves caught in a narrative of victimhood or hopelessness, we can consciously choose to rewrite our story. We can choose to see our losses not as endpoints, but as turning points, moments that propel us towards a new and more expansive version of ourselves. Having faith in life's journey doesn't mean we will never doubt or struggle. It means that even in the midst of uncertainty, we choose to trust the resilience of our spirit. It means that even when we can't see the end, we keep walking one step at a time, knowing that each step brings us closer to home. Allow me a second to give the welcome to Florence. Thank you very much for your support, and if you got this far, please accept, as always, a hug on behalf of the entire team. We say goodbye, reminding you to always remain optimistic. Even if life seems difficult, always keep in mind that what you will gain is greater than what you have lost. See you soon. Stay awake.